Welcome to another episode of Give It a Nudge. Today we have someone who we've been trying to get into this studio for well over a year, and through neither of our faults, both of us being too busy, we haven't managed it. But today we have Michael Batko from Startmate, who I'm sure nearly everybody knows. So Michael, welcome to the show finally.
Yeah, glad I'm here.
And we haven't tried that hard. I think I reached out to you, you said yes, and then we left it a year. But yeah, so we kind of tried. But yes, I'm glad to have you here. So much to talk about, so much to unpack. But before we do that, I guess, since Startmate is probably your main thing now, would you say?
Yes.
Why don't you just give us a quick précis of what that is, just in case there's someone out there watching who doesn't know?
Yeah. The tagline is Startmate is the epicenter of startup ambition in Australia and New Zealand. And we do that for founders, for people looking for jobs in startups, and for investors.
So everybody.
Everybody who touches founders, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been, how long is it? 7?
For me personally, 7 years. Startmate, 14 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Time flies.
But let's go back a bit. So, and we'll give someone some context and background. We're building the characters just like in a movie. You started your life in accounting or Big Four consulting. Was it accounting or Big Four consulting?
Consulting mostly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you came out of uni, you went down the route of consulting, which is a sensible route, and every parent would have been proud. Your journey to where we are today has been meandering and wild.
True.
Just give us a sort of talk through it and you know how you ended up in your first startup and what that sort of awoke in you to want to go into that world.
All right. Well, I'll start from the beginning then, which is like I left school when I was 18 and wanted to study in English. Australia was too far. The US was too expensive, so I went to the UK. The way I chose my degree was I took a book with every single degree there possibly could be, and I ripped out every page that I didn't want to do. And all I was left with was economics and management, which was the last page remaining in the book.
How long did it take you to do that?
It took a while. But economics and management was the thing. And then my first job, essentially, I asked myself, what does I didn't know what I want to do. What does every company in the world need? And it was finance. And so my first ever job was actually at American Express doing P&Ls and balance sheets, but I didn't love the numbers, wanted to work with people, and that's when I went to consulting. And like you said, every parent's proud of consulting.
PwC, wasn't it?
PwC and KPMG, that's right. Yeah, all my friends were going to consulting.
It's the dream. Particularly, were you in the UK still?
I was in the UK, yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in the UK, but it was it still called was it called PwC? Then was it called?
Yeah, a couple of rebrands.
Or was it Coopers and Lybrand? And I remember all of that merger happening.
That's right, yeah. And all the colours changing for a time.
Yeah, I remember in all the buildings around London, you used to walk around, see them all changing. So you ended up in consulting, which is, I think it's interesting. A lot of people in startups have a time in consulting, and I think consulting gives you such a broad spectrum of so many different companies. It often opens your eyes to things that you might not have seen if you'd gone more into a sort of more traditional career. Yeah,
no, it's fun. I loved it. Like you just get exposed to so many different projects and people and so on. And you do the whole thing of like Monday to Thursday, stay in 5-star hotels and getting flown into the different cities. And as in the early 20s, I was like amazing. Awesome. But then it lasted for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then you're like, well, now I'm in another hotel room, just like giving another person advice, but not actually doing much. Like, I don't know. Like I actually love like getting my fingers dirty and just like getting shit done. Whereas like consulting is a lot of recommending strategies, which then end up at the bottom of the drawer. At the grand old age of young 20s. Yes, exactly. Like, who am I to give people advice? That's right. Yeah. So, where did you go from there? I did my master's in Sweden. I met my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and I moved to Australia. Posted on the Facebook group and got a job in my first ever startup called Mad Paws.
Which is it still going?
Yeah. Mad Paws now listed on the ASX, and I was there when it was just myself and the founder back in the day.
Oh, were you like number 2?
Yeah, literally like super early days.
I did not know that. I knew you were in an ops role at the end because I'd read that about you, but I didn't know you were number 2. Oh, wow, you really went like full startup.
Yeah. I was in the call with customers, dogs running away and like dogs eating chocolate and me trying to firefight it all. And we're going, honestly, we were doing everything. We're literally getting like dog costumes and going to the dog lovers show just to get a bit of buzz going.
And so you must have been there a while, right?
Actually only like 6 to 12 months, yeah.
Okay, and what made you sort of move on from that? Obviously that's a baptism of fire.
Yeah, well, straight into it. It was super fun. But dogs and cats, I love them, but it's not my life's mission. I don't want to do that forever. And I then got approached by another startup called Expert 360, a marketplace for consultants. And they were the perfect mix for like consulting and marketplace for me.
Yep.
And I joined that with like 6-7 people. We raised $40 million from Airtree and scaled it to a team of 60-70 people, which is super fun.
Which is a journey that I think a lot of people should go on, because gosh, I think that kind of quick scaling, you learn more than you could possibly imagine without even realizing you're learning it, right?
So all the mistakes that you make, actually, which are the best ones. Yeah.
I've got a question for you. And I had this question this morning with someone where if you look at the world now, everyone is obsessed with modeling and learning from other people's mistakes, which is great. And don't get me wrong, I think you should. I think if you can prevent yourself making mistakes, that's fantastic. But at the same time, if you just copy other people and don't make any of your own mistakes, I feel like you don't learn anything. No. You're learning how to follow someone. So I think that it's almost gone too far. You went into an environment where you would have made hundreds of thousands of mistakes every day. Right? Yeah. So one, you get used to it and you get comfortable with it and you don't stop beating yourself up about it. But two, I think you just learn. And I think now we've almost gone completely the other way, where everyone's just trying to learn about how not to make any mistakes. And I feel like they're not learning anything. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Oh, totally. Like, I think especially in some areas of your life, you actually need the mistakes and the scar tissue, and that's actually what forms you as a human. I think in particular, people management is one of those things. You can read as many books as you want to, you can get as much advice as you want, but it's until you've actually made the mistakes and they hurt them yourself so deeply that you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you really need to hurt yourself quite deeply to actually really remember. Otherwise, sometimes you might do something different next time because you didn't realize you hadn't made a mistake. You didn't realize it was a mistake that had been made. Okay, cool. Anyway, so so what happened with Expert 360? What did you exit? Did you sell? What was the end of that?
Yeah, we raised the Series B. My job from being super broad became much more narrow. And I essentially said, instead of working with one startup, could I actually work with 50 startups? So I quit my job and actually said, I'm going to take time out, go around the world. I literally went to the Amazon rainforest, the survival tour, like traveled in Portugal, etc., etc. And then before I knew it, like I just really wanted to jump back into a job again. And the answer for me was essentially like either venture capital, give a bunch of people money, but then unfortunately not work with them on a day-to-day, or accelerators, give people money and actually work with them every single day. So then I fired up a Google Sheet with every single accelerator in the world, San Francisco, Tel Aviv, South Africa. I literally contacted 200 companies, cold outreach, got a bunch of interviews, and as serendipity has it, I actually went back to Sydney.
So before we go into how that went there, just dial it back a little. What do you learn by trekking through the rainforest? I'm intrigued, because I would imagine that would be another whole world of pain in a completely different manner, coupled in with excitement and wonder.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. So like, what I actually learned was that we had to hunt everything ourselves, fish, hunt, get our own food. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All we had was like clean water and kind of a pot to cook.
How long was this for?
This was only like 4 or 5 days, so it's not too long.
Still 4 or 5 days without any food.
But also the amazing thing, the thing I didn't know that I learned was we were just fishing for piranhas. But as soon as you get one piranha, you just chop it up and you just put it back on the hook. And piranhas eat piranhas. So you just endless food.
So they taste good?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, honestly, when you're hungry, you'd eat anything.
And I guess, so there's obviously a certain view of piranhas, movies aside. You chop a piranha and you chop it in and all the other piranhas come. How do you then catch them? Is it a line? Is it a net? Do you get in there and risk them chomping on you?
Well, no, there was the other surprising thing of it's just a hook and just the normal fishing kind of thing. Right. But as soon as you catch the piranha, get them in the boat, the guide essentially just goes like, if you want to go for a swim, just jump in. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we were just literally fishing for piranhas just there. And you're like, it's fine. They don't attack anything that's not injured. So as long as you don't have any injury, just jump in.
So if you're bleeding,
that's not good. Yeah, not the greatest. Yeah, wouldn't risk it.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Isn't that interesting? Well, there's something I have learned. I assumed that I was under the impression you could swim in piranha-infested waters as long as they weren't hungry. How are you supposed to know whether they're hungry or not? I wasn't sure. But okay, well that's cleared that up. So and you went through a number of different locations. It wasn't just the Amazon. What do you think you got out of that? Because it's a very different world, and I guess you get a lot more time to think. There's a lot less distractions, a lot more less dopamine. There's probably more time to not find yourself, but I guess really sort of understand yourself a bit better. Did you find that? And how long were you away in total?
Yeah, totally. So I started essentially with saying like I'm gonna do 6 to 12 months just by myself and just traveling.
So you didn't take the girlfriend?
I actually didn't know. Like she was still in her job, and she was like, "Wherever you're gonna go, I'm gonna follow you." And this is what's the irony of me going back to Sydney again and be like, "Hello, I'm back here." But on the trip itself, it was like I took 6 to 12 months. But what I learned about myself was after a month, I just couldn't sit still again. I was like, "All right, get me back into a job, like actually building something," because I love that part. And in terms of like finding it yourself, like one of my favorite experiences was taking. I've got another like little story there, but like from Colombia to Manaus in Brazil, there's like one ferry which goes like once a week, and you can't find any information about it online. And I blog quite a lot. I write a lot of blog posts. And I was there in this boat of 500 Colombians. There was no beds or anything. There was literally like you brought a hammock with you and just set it up, and there was 500 people just swaying right and left, right next to each other. But the point was that on the boat, no reception, 5-6 days, just Colombians. Like I don't speak the language either, and it was great to just journal, journal, but also like I wrote a bunch of questions down for myself and just answered them. And the other kind of fun fact was I wrote a blog post about that experience, and I still now, 10 years later, well, 7, 8 years later, get hit up by people being like, "Hey, can you tell me more about the boat?" Because there's no information about the boat
Still
online.
None.
Yeah.
How funny. I mean, I think those things would be amazing to do those things. I mean, I think you're very, I guess, fortunate in that you had the foresight to want to go and do something like that. As a lot of people, once they get into the world of working, they get caught up. So actually to take that break and go, good that the girlfriend, now wife, stuck around too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just think people should do more of those kinds of things. And you're seeing that now, there's encouragement for people to take time out. But I think it was amazing you did that. Okay, so you're back in Sydney.
Yes, back in Sydney. Actually, I didn't get a job in Sydney. I posted on a Facebook group, and friend of a friend of a friend tagged somebody and said, "Do you want to play soccer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I have no friends here. All I know is my girlfriend. I have literally nothing to do. And went to play soccer, and he was like, "Hey, you're actually pretty good. Come back next week again." Played soccer 4 times. Somebody left on parental leave, and I got essentially to fill in for somebody on parental leave at Mad Paws. Yeah.
You see, from a recruitment perspective, this is not how I want people to find their jobs. But again, I guess, the sense of community, I think, that exists, particularly in Australia, I think, more so than other places. Maybe it's because it's a smaller population. It's amazing that you can find a job by playing soccer. Like, you literally come back from traveling the world, you're a little bit handy with the ball, and before you know it, bang, you got a job.
Yeah.
And so where was that job?
That was at Mad Paws, the marketplace for pet sitters. That was the first one there. But yeah, that was very serendipitous.
Yeah. Okay. So, back to starting up your own incubator.
Yep.
How do you do that if you haven't done it? Because there's a lot of work in just running a community, let alone doing an incubator. And I've been involved with a couple of semi-incubators at a very, very loose level. And even I felt that's a lot of work. So I imagine setting one up is enormous.
Yeah, so for context, like it all started in 2010, 2011, and it was started by Nikki Stjavak, who's the founder of Blackbird Ventures, the largest VC fund in the country. And I joined in 2018. But when I joined, Startmate was just myself and James Tynan, who's now a partner at SquarePeg.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's a lot of work because you essentially, you take money from people and you do all the investment docs. You actually invest it into companies. You do investment docs. You actually help them grow, and then you do a whole demo day at the end, and you're trying to help them out with hiring, with marketing, with sales.
And you need a space, right? Because you have
a space. Like there's a lot of things. Like back then we were just doing it, the two of us. And as you said, like actually the biggest problem with incubators or accelerators is cash flow. Like it's a terrible business model. I can't recommend it to anybody. And we were fortunately able to make it work, but most organizations get kind of money from universities, corporates, or governments. But the problem is that money only lasts you for a couple of years, and you need to try to keep renewing it. At Startmate, we've been able to diversify it a little bit more. We raise our own funds, but we also have our programs where we help people get into startup jobs with our fellowship programs, and we help angel investors break into the sphere as well. Yeah,
I've seen a lot of the angel investment thing over the last few years. It's kind of gone nuts. So where is Startmate now? Because I feel like it's everywhere.
Yeah, so we've now invested in over 250 companies worth over $3.5 billion. And now every single year we actually help 1,000 people get into startup jobs every year.
That's wild.
And then we get about 150 new angel investors and help them write the first check into startups. So that's kind of the scale of startup.
That's big.
Startmate. Yeah.
And what's your role in it now? Because I imagine it's not just the two of you anymore.
Yeah, no, we are now a team of almost 20 of us. We just had our offsite in Bali actually 2 weeks ago, first international offsite with 20 people, which was super fun. But my role as CEO, I mean, that's the beauty of the CEO role as a company is growing as well. Like it just changes every 6 months. And there's something beautiful about that, where you keep reinventing yourself with your priorities.
That seems to be something that I know it's something I need, but it seems to be something you need. I get bored very quickly with things. It seems like you might too.
I love that, yeah.
I guess in all of that and creating all of that sort of opportunity for founders and for investors and for people getting jobs, and that's what you've done. You've created opportunities for all of those people, right? Which is amazing. What do you think has been, and I want to start with the easiest thing first, because everyone always talks about what the hardest thing is, and most people know what that is, and we will come back to it because everyone will want to know. But what's been the thing that you were like expecting, dreading, the one thing you didn't want to do or whatever, and you did, and you went, oh my God, that was so much easier. And it might have been dumb luck, or it might have been very just an easier thing to do. But what do you think that is?
Actually, getting the word out, like it's all throughout the community. Like the way Startmate really works is that we're actually not the greatest people at marketing. We're not the loudest people in the room, but because we give people incredible experiences throughout the programs, they just love talking about it. And that's almost like what was way easier, because if they have a great experience, they're going to tell their friends and family, and that's the most magical thing for me.
That's the best way to market. Everyone says if you can get it right, that's the easiest, cheapest, most effective way to market. And I mean, think about it yourself. When you do anything in life, you want a recommendation. And if you can't get a recommendation, you're going to go online and research and look for something to tell you about a recommendation. You're looking to get that recommendation in as strong a form as you can. And at the end of the day, you're reading reviews from strangers. It's still kind of a recommendation. So I think humans crave that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where now? So you've got all sorts of other things going on. You've got a side hustle, which you haven't told me about, which we will go to. But before we go to that, where's Startmate? Is it just to continue to grow? Are you just Australia? Have you had a look at overseas, or what's the thoughts?
I'll tell you a short term and a long term. Sure. So like, where are we now? Or like where are we going now? So essentially on the founder side, you can imagine it like in the Olympics, you run a race and you have 100 hurdles to cross and you jump over. So I actually care about bringing those hurdles down. So we essentially have a pre-accelerator where we help people validate an idea. We invest $120,000 for the accelerator where we get the first kind of couple of customers. Then I'm building a program where essentially we help you with a series A and B and C kind of thing onwards, called GrowthMate. On the other side, it's like helping, we now have Women Fellowship and Student Fellowship where we help 1,000 people get into startup jobs. My next thing that I'm building is actually an engineering fellowship or collective to get more engineers in. And on the investor side of things as well, like we have programs where we do that and help investors for 3 months each, but I actually want to extend it to have a whole community of investors who just recommend deal flow to each other like every single day. And the kind of the long-term picture though is, if you want to know my real vision for like in 10 years time, is to build Startmate City. So I literally want to have 1 million people city in Australia to bring ambitious people together. Founders, people share ideas, and even if they don't work out, they hire each other. They say yes rather than saying no.
So utopia.
Yeah, the perfect place.
Where do you want to do this? Because that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people, yeah. No, I've started exploring it. So I put this vision out a couple of years ago. We made it on the Australian Innovators cover page, actually, in 2021. And off the back of that, essentially every state government hit me up and like, hey, where are you going to do this? Because the thing about the Australian state governments is they don't ever want to be the first one, but they never want to be the last one.
They are competitive, though. They are very competitive.
There's very competitive. Like as soon as Victoria does something, New South Wales has to do it as well, etc. So, but the problem was because they never want to be the first one to start it, so that actually kind of fell over. And now
it's like investing. No one ever wants to be the first. There was like, who else have you got on? Who else is the same?
Who's going to lead it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I'm still exploring it, and I actually don't mind the location too much. What I'm doing right now is essentially Startmate's built like the biggest kind of startup online community. It's like there's 4,000 of us now. And now I'm doing that in hubs. Sydney, Melbourne, and Auckland are the 3 hubs. So like actually bringing like essentially like little co-working spaces online and then making it bigger and bigger.
That's super cool. So I guess what you're taking what you're doing and you're really expanding it and going more granular and giving people the same value but in a more intense form, right? Like any company, a bit like your role, where you're doing everything and then you suddenly Series B, you're doing something more concentrated. You're kind of doing the same in each area. That's awesome. And so in terms of like, I guess, the companies that you've invested in, that's a lot of money. You're investing, some of the things you just talked about in the programs you're doing, that's a lot of money. Where are your funds coming from now? Are they coming from previous investments? Are you still raising like all the VCs in the world that are always raising, never deploying? Where does that money come from?
Yeah, totally. So we are probably the biggest community venture capital fund in Australia. Like we raise a new fund every 6 months, which means I'm constantly fundraising. So we the minimum investment check at Startmate is $15,000, which makes it nice and accessible as well.
Yeah.
The usual VC fund minimum check is $250K.
Yep.
And which means that most of our funds actually come from founders and ex-founders. So like you can literally think Mike and Brooks and Scott Farquhar from Atlassian, or Kate Morris from Adore Beauty, or Dom Pim from Upbank. They actually all love investing back into founders again.
Yeah.
And to be fair, they are our larger check sizes because they've got family offices now.
Yep.
But actually a lot of our alumni who was at Series C or D, they love investing back into the community.
Really would do. What an interesting model. And have you, in terms of the exits, have you had exits? You must have had some by now.
Yeah. So like we're also like in the top 5, 25% of VC funds in the world in terms of return. So like just recently, we actually sold a company and had 100x return of our investment.
Wow.
So like 100 times the money back, which then for our investors who gave us money 10 years ago, they literally got 9 times their money back. So you gave us $100,000, you literally got $900,000 back.
That's massive.
And then on the other side, like there's actually quite a few things happening right now which are called secondaries, where like essentially there's so much interest in the company that the investor wants to buy more than is even available. So us as investors, we actually sometimes sell a portion of our stake down. So like, for example, we've had 2-3 companies where we sold down 20% of our stake, which then also returned the entire fund like 1 or 2 times over. Yeah.
Wow. And do you typically keep a certain percentage, or is it just varied?
It varies. Like because we're so community driven, we actually get our investors to vote. So they actually get to decide themselves. And usually the decision so far has been we want to sell down roughly 20 or 30%, make our money back 2 or 3 times, and then keep 70% of the money still riding for like an even bigger.
I think there's a lot of people who don't know all this, which is super interesting. So, okay, well, that's impressive. There's no question. So congratulations, well done. I mean, that's all come from a Facebook post and getting soccer, basically. So
right.
Incredible. But now you've got a little side hustle. Are you going to tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. Paddlepod started 4 years ago, and essentially it stands for productivity, Paddlepod, and it just comes from my own desire to be more productive, and I love.
Don't we all have that?
Yeah, so I always look over people's shoulders. I'm like, oh, you can do this differently, and they ask me for all those tips and tricks, and then I was doing workshops for an hour, and then I was doing I literally taught this in university in Switzerland. They flew me in for like a workshop. And then I was like, I can probably build this into a product where I can help hundreds and thousands of people who have become more productive. So now over the last 4 years, I've had over 500 people go through that. I've now expanded it into a second course now where to bring AI into your day-to-day.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually just expanding it into B2B sales and AI in marketing as well, which is going live in a month or 2.
The AI thing's good. And I'll tell you why. We've obviously had a lot of AI founders on. In fact, yesterday we had Leonardo.ai. She's crazy. I loved her. She was that episode will come out very soon. She was absolute firecracker. Came in here with like a ball of energy. But one of the things we were talking about is the world's impression of AI and how it's a little bit misconstrued right now, and whether you've got one group of people who feel like it's going to be the end of the world and everyone's going to lose their jobs, and then you've got the other group of people who really just want to ignore it and pretend nothing's going to change. And obviously it has to be something in the middle. And I think teaching people how to use AI is something that no one else is. I haven't really seen anyone doing that. There's lots of people and experts telling people, but there's no one teaching people.
Totally.
And I think that's a huge market, absolutely enormous. And it's essential because we all know in 24 months, if you're not using AI in just about everything you're doing, then you are so far behind everybody. And it's moving so fast. I think you need to have that education piece. And I've not seen anyone else talk about that.
Well, that's why the pro course is actually so successful, because the crazy thing to me is that so many of those tools are free, and yet you've not tried anything apart from maybe ChatGPT 2 or 3 times. But there's so many other tools there, from design to video to audio to making your whole avatar yourself. Apparently, I can literally make a duplicate of myself and chuck me on a Zoom call and just
That's what we were talking about yesterday. With we were talking about this whole digital twin thing, and what you can do with it. It's quite crazy.
There's so many things out there, but nobody tries them, even though they're free. So with Paddlepod, you can do the 5 weeks, and you essentially almost get forced to just try things out, but also learn from the other people going through the course.
We should put some of this content on our Balance the Grind website, which we should definitely do that. And that's to help people live better. I think some of these courses we should promote on there, because this is definitely something people need to take on.
get a
Well, you're busy, so it's a good job you're productive because you got a lot going on. And then, all right, we come back to that last question because people always hate it if we don't ask. What has been the hardest lesson you've learned? You know, we talked about learning lessons, and it could be something that happened in the Amazon. It could be something happened in putting up your hammock on that boat. I don't know. But what do you think is the hardest lesson that you learned? Or perhaps something that, and this is always an interesting one, and I know I've had a few of these, and I hate to admit it, but I have. I didn't learn the first time, and I haven't even made that mistake once, sometimes even 3 times before I've learned. Have you got any real doozies like that?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I was thinking like 2 things. Like the first one is like the hardest thing recently was like just raising a fund. Like we raised $12 million of a continuity fund. And I looked back recently, I was like, instead of it taking 6 months, it took me like 2.5 years. So I was like, oh my God, this took way longer than I thought. But maybe something that people can relate to a bit more, even more easily is the hardest thing is managing people. Like we've got now a team of 20 people, but like the mistakes I've made along the way are just absolutely crazy. So one thing I do, and I've done actually ever since my first job at American Express, is I've started a Google sheet, just a spreadsheet. And every time I observe my manager to do something amazing, I write it down. And I'm like, this is the type of manager I want to be. And every time they screw up, I actually put it down there being like, this is the type of person I don't want to be. So now I've got a whole spreadsheet of like 30, 40 rows of like the biggest things of like what shaped me as a manager.
So you've got an angel and a devil list, essentially.
Oh, totally. And it's like those things which happen to you personally that you then go like, oh my God.
You should publish that. Yeah. You know that would go off. If you publish that, that would be a bestseller like that. Because it's one of the hardest things to learn how to do. And when you do really stuff it up, it's quite, I find it quite painful.
Oh my God.
Even if I don't like the person I stuffed it up with, I still find it quite personal. I feel wounded. By it. So you should, 100% you should publish that. That would be it. That would be the best. That would be the best product you've ever put out, I reckon. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's great to really open eyes on Startmate. I know so many people are involved, but I think a lot of people who aren't, they look at it and they go, well, I kind of get it, but I don't. And hopefully this is opened their eyes to everything on that. And with the new pod stuff, I mean, that's awesome. So I think that you're doing a great job.
Great questions. Thank you.
Mate, pleasure having you on. And we'll get you back on again when you start building that city, I think.
Perfect.
I hope you all enjoyed today. I hope you really finally understand exactly everything about Startmate. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.